I used to set goals that I really had no control over. Get promoted in my job, increase my income to X amount, save X amount of dollars, grow the business to Y, all these types of things that really, they're outcomes. And the problem is that you don't control outcomes. You control inputs. Outcomes are side effects. And really the moment that you stop lying to yourself about that, everything gets a whole lot simpler. Like, think about it for a second. You might want to get promoted in your job. Obviously there's certain things that you can do that can make that happen. And there's things you can do that can make that less likely. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to how well is your employer's business doing? Can they afford to have pay rises? Will your boss vouch for you? Does the HR lady like you, for example? Ridiculous things like this, political things, these really are actually major determinants of the outcome. And so it's not really fair on yourself to set a goal and hold yourself to it and base your confidence and your self-esteem on achieving it when really you don't actually have fuck all control of whether or not it will become a reality. And that's what I used to do. Pretty much for my whole life, I've set goals like that because that's the easiest way to think about it. You go, here's the future state that I want to achieve. This is what I want. And it's almost always an outcome, but you never have full control of whether or not you'll reach that outcome. It's much easier to work backwards to what you do control. So why am I talking about this? Well, I'm now running a new super simplified operating system that's really just based on the things that I do control. The 5 things that I control that I've realized really move the needle for me are sleep, diet, training, content, and outbound sales. The first 3 of those I've had dialed in for months: sleep, diet, and training, and I've seen great results in that domain. That's really like the operator stack. That stabilizes your life and your cognitive capacity and basically everything that you do. It's absolutely critically important. But the full 5, and especially with the addition of content and outbound sales, that's the system that I'm really going to implement and run over the next 200 days as we spin up the business on this channel properly. And this is really the first time in my life that I've aligned my goals not with an outcome, but just simply with the inputs that I control. I've effectively got roughly 200 days left until I turn 30. And we're coming to the end of 2026, which is normally when I set goals for the upcoming year. And rather than set a goal like I want to achieve, $50,000 recurring revenue in my business, or I want to achieve, 20 clients on my client roster or something like that, that's an outcome which I can't actually control because of the randomness in the universe and all the other factors at play. What I've done instead is say, okay, what is the state that I want to get to? And I've defined that clearly and then said, okay, what are the inputs that really move the needle? And I arrived at those 5 things. And so over the next 200 days, what I'm going to do is I'm going to effectively score myself on the 5 inputs that I do control each day. There's 200 days, there's 5 inputs per day. 200 times 5 is 1,000. So there's effectively 1,000 points. You either hit the lever or you don't, and honestly, the scoreboard doesn't care about your narrative. You can't lie. You just got to be honest with yourself. And so why am I doing it this way? Well, aside from the fact that I've seen people like Jeff Bezos talk about this specifically and how it's worked for him, I've noticed in my own life that when I hit all of the levers consistently, my life doesn't actually improve linearly. It improves at a noticeably faster rate. On the weeks where everything fires cleanly, it genuinely feels like I'm improving week to week at a rate of maybe 4 or 5% in strength, cognition, momentum, creativity, business, everything. Just across the board, you can feel the momentum. You feel the wind at your back. And on the weeks where I sort of drift or fall off on a particular lever, I really do feel it, whether it's shitty sleep or a bit of a sloppy diet, a missed training session at the gym. It doesn't really matter what it is, but after a week, you might find that if you go out drinking, for example, one night, that will probably lead to worse diet on that day. You've got calories from alcohol. You might miss a training session the next morning. And then all of a sudden, a week's gone by and you just don't feel the same as on a week where you had 100% adherence or close to it. And so those types of weeks, they don't feel like a 5% improvement. They feel more like you still improve because you still did something. The whole week wasn't to waste, but it feels more like a 2% or a 3%. It's definitely less. It's noticeably less, and you can feel it and you can observe it. And what I've sort of learned, if you look at the math behind all of this, is that difference day to day is going to be invisible. But over time, it's massive. And I'm thinking about it in my own timeline, right? And I've got 200 days until I turn 30. If you run those rates across 40 weeks or 200 days, the difference is enormous. What is amazing about it is that the difference between a 5% per week improvement and a 3% per week improvement is not 2% overall, because it's compounding week to week. You're stacking bricks on top of each other. And so when you actually do the maths behind all of this, it's quite mind-blowing. If you assume that you're running a system where you might be adhering at 90% or 85% and you slip off, you have a cheat day once a week or even twice a week, and you get those sort of 2 to 3% per week improvements. And then you compare that to a system where you're adhering to a much higher standard. And so you might be getting the 5% that I generally have been feeling. The difference between that compounded over 40 weeks is not 2%. 3% compounded over 40 weeks. The math behind it works out, you generally get about a 3x improvement. But a 5% is not a 5x, it's a 7x. So it's more than twice the outcome. It's more than twice the result. And you can see this in fitness, more obvious than anywhere else. Let me show you something. These two photos here were taken literally 1 month apart. 35 days. I've got the date stamp in both of them. This wasn't a prep for anything special. This was literally just 35 days of constant 100% adherence to my diet, my sleep, and my training. No alcohol, no cheap meals, no nothing. Now, I've been going to the gym for 10 years, and I've never looked like the second photo because I never followed the inputs consistently. And I didn't realize how much damage I was doing. I'd train Monday to Friday, and then I'd go out for a 2-day bender on the weekend. And I just assumed that this was how I was destined to look. I didn't realize the damage that I was doing on those days off. Those weekends literally killed and reset all my momentum and stalled any tangible progress. 1 month of perfect adherence and the slope changed completely, and it changed so quickly that I couldn't believe it. It was almost so fast that I was noticing changes daily. But week to week, you can see clear differences. And really, I think this exact same structure applies directly to business. When the operator is sharp, sleep, diet, and training is all dialed in, you're feeling good every day, then your content and your outbound, you put a lot more effort into it, it hits at a different level, you're more confident, that comes across. It just creates better results across the board. You think clearer, you adapt faster, you execute harder, you recover quicker. The whole system just compounds. Now, I'm not aiming for 100% adherence forever. Don't get me wrong, because that is literally impossible. That's robot level adherence. That's just not possible. But what I am aiming for is long stretches over this next 200-day period of near perfect input control. What I would really like is that 200 days from now, I can look at the scoreboard and see that I scored something like a 970. I might have missed 30 of those inputs across 1,000 days. And the effect of that is that I would have kept that percentage, that compounding percentage rate as high as possible, and will have got a higher multiple of the outcome. Because even a small drift reduces the slope, especially if you let it in every week. And over 200 days, the slope is everything. You don't need motivation and you don't need perfect days. You just need to control the levers that move your life forward. Inputs compound and outcomes don't. If you protect that last 5%, the curve just takes you somewhere completely different. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. I drop one like this every 48 hours, and I hope to see you on the next one. Cheers.